Hi, everybody. Welcome to part 3 of our interview with Norm Finkelstein. He's an expert on the Israeli-Palestinian conflicts, and he's got everything you need to know about it. So let me just shift really quickly to the BDS movement, because Chuck Schumer has said that the BDS movement is, that's really what got, I don't know how, it had a big effect in South Africa, getting rid of that, right? When people divested of their investments and celebrities wouldn't perform in South Africa, and it raised everyone's consciousness. And so now they're trying to do the same thing to affect Israel's conduct with how they treat the Palestinians and pushing it towards a solution. And people are saying that that's anti-Semitic. Chuck Schumer gave a speech. I saw him give a speech at an APEC convention where he said that BDS is anti-Semitism because there's a lot of other countries around Israel that do bad things too, and people aren't boycotting them. So what do you say to that?
Well, people have finite resources and finite energy. There are a few people who have them. There are a few people on this planet who have this mental range, range and physical energy, which is stupendous. For example, somebody like Noam Chomsky, who is able to move every piece on the chessboard of the world with his eyes blinded. But most of us have to make choices where we're going to invest our energy, where we're going to invest our resources. Now, in the case of South Africa, the claims that Chuck Schumer are making, that was exactly what the South African government said. It said, why are you attacking us? Why not the Eastern Bloc? Why not the Soviet Union? They would say that blacks in South Africa, they have a higher standard of living than blacks in elsewhere in Africa, which was actually statistically true. So why are you focusing on us? Anybody can make the argument, what about? What about Eastern Europe? What about Saudi Arabia? What about the rest of Africa? What about the rest of the Middle East? That's a very easy argument to make, but it doesn't change the fact that the United States, our government, and in particular Chuck Schumer, is investing a huge amount of money and resources in propping up a regime which is guilty of massive human rights violations. And to me, that's justification enough for focusing on Israel. If you were to ask me to focus on another issue, show me the facts. If I'm convinced, I'll support it. But you can't use the argument, well, what about? Everybody uses that argument. That was the South African argument.
So I hear what you're saying. What you're saying is, well, if you think other countries are doing horrible things too, start a movement and I'll support that. Right? You're not saying because other people are doing bad things, please don't hold me accountable for the bad things I'm doing, which is what Chuck Schumer's argument is. So
Chuck Schumer went to my high school. He's an extremely bright man. Nobody can take that away from him. And he came from humble beginnings. Nobody can take that away from him. His father was an exterminator. I didn't know Chuck. He was 3 years ahead of me, but I did know his sister Fran, extremely bright young woman. And I would say that 40 years later, she left a deep impression. But the fact of the matter is, and I don't say this gleefully, I don't say it happily, Chuck Schumer is just a paid thug now.
Yes.
He just takes the money from right-wing Jews and from Wall Street, and he does their bidding. That's his function in life. It's a very sorry thing to have to say. And it's actually an interesting tale. One day, maybe you can have them both on your show, because not only did Chuck Schumer go to my high school, but so did Bernie Sanders. And they took, as you can tell, radically different paths. And Sanders also came from humble beginnings. And he often says growing up in his home was not easy, because there were a lot of fights between his mother and father over money issues. His father was a door-to-door salesman or a traveling salesman. So they both came from quite similar backgrounds, but took very divergent paths. Chuck Schumer, he called for the strangulation of Gaza. He did that in 2010. Now, bear in mind what that means. Gaza has 2 million people. Of those 2 million, 1 million are children. They're under the age of 18. So Charles Schumer, the great Holocaust defender, the great defender of persecuted peoples, he called for the economic strangulation of 1 million children. That's a thug. That's a murderer. And we should not recoil from using that language out of some sort of deference to the fact that he's Jewish or deference to the fact that he came from humble beginnings, which he did. He ended up a thug, a paid agent for right-wing Jews and for Wall Street. And that's a very sad commentary. But then, of course, there's the redeeming side, which is that for each Chuck Schumer, there's another Bernie Sanders, who's also Jewish, who also came from humble beginnings, but has shown a heart, and who remembers where he came from and understands what it means to be poor, what it means to be powerless. So it's not an entirely bleak picture.
So let me just wrap it up here and just say, where do you see? It doesn't seem like there's going to be a solution. I just don't see it, especially as long as Benjamin Netanyahu's in power. What do you see happening in the next decade with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict?
Listen, I'm not a religious person. I grew up in a resolutely secular home. But I do believe with the adage, God helps those who help themselves. It's in the hands of the people of Palestine. If they can find the strength, the moral fortitude, the willingness to sacrifice, and I'm saying that from the safety of my home in Brooklyn, New York, so I'm not telling them what to do. But if they find the strength, as Fannie Lou Hamer once said, you can pray to God as much as you want, but if you don't get up and do something, nothing is going to change. And she was a God-fearing woman. God helps those who help themselves. Right now, the people of Gaza have tried to seize control of their destiny, and since March 30th, every Friday, they've marched to the gates of that concentration camp called Gaza. They've marched to those gates trying to get, not their freedom even, just to get that murderous, brutal blockade of Gaza lifted. So long as people continue to fight, continue to struggle, I will continue to support them, and then you can't predict.
Okay.
Maybe they'll win, maybe not.
Okay. Norm Finkelstein, thank you very much for being our guest. Thanks for enlightening us. Thanks for your I like that you don't pull your punches, and that's what we like here at this show. So thanks again, and we look forward to talking to you soon again. We're announcing our live dates for 2019. We're going to Ventura, California, Hermosa Beach, California, Tempe, Arizona, Austin, Texas, Chicago, Portland, all over the country. Go to jimmydorecomedy.com for a link for tickets. If you'd like to support the show, please join our Patreon or premium membership. We give you hours of bonus content every week. And remember, if you think you're subscribed, you might not be. Check to make sure you're subscribed and click the bell so you get a notice every time we drop a clip. Thanks for your support.